All right, so get ready for this. Today, we are going deep into a case, an Indian Supreme Court case. It's about employees at the Bhavnagar Municipal Corporation in India. They got a pay raise, then it was taken away.
Yeah, and what makes this case really interesting is how easily things can go wrong when the wording in these schemes isn't totally clear,
Right.
It's not specific enough.
Right.
And we're looking at the actual Supreme Court judgment from May 18th, 2022.
Okay.
Rishipai Jagdish Chandra Pathak and others versus the Bhavnagar Municipal Corporation.
So let's rewind to the beginning.
Yeah.
We've got these employees, and they were originally temporary,
Right.
junior clerks,
Yeah.
and they were moved to permanent positions as data entry operators in the computer department. And things seemed good at first, right?
Yeah.
Because they got a pay bump, right?
Right.
Thanks to this 1994 scheme from the government of Gujarat. And the scheme was designed to help employees like them who had limited chances for traditional promotions.
Exactly. The problem is that the scheme's language, like the actual wording about how pay scales would be determined based on these non-traditional promotions, it was open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Like you can imagine the employee's interpretation and the corporation's interpretation, well, they were totally different.
Yeah.
And that's what started this whole legal battle.
Yeah. So to give everyone listening an idea of what was at stake here, the difference in these pay scales was a lot. We're talking about ranges like 4,000 to 6,000 rupees, 5,000 to 8,000 rupees, and 4,500 to 7,000 rupees.
Yeah.
And to put that in perspective, I mean, even the lower end of those scales would have been a lot back then, especially when you consider how much it adds up over the years.
And here's where it gets really interesting. There's actually a precedent. It comes into play, and it really calls the corporation's actions into question. A few years before this case, another employee, his name was Mukeshbhai Jaswantrai Joshi, he sued the corporation over the same scheme, and he argued they were misinterpreting it, and the Supreme Court actually sided with him.
So wait a minute. The corporation was already told they were getting this wrong.
Exactly.
So this is like they knew this was wrong, but they did it again.
Well, the Supreme Court basically said the corporation should have learned from Mukeshbhai's case. You see? If they had applied the scheme consistently, like they were supposed to, this whole mess with Rishipai and the other employees could have been avoided.
Right.
And this idea that past decisions should be used to inform present ones, well, that's called a precedent.
Okay, so they messed up once. Maybe it was an honest mistake.
Yeah.
But to make the same mistake again, especially after the Supreme Court told them they were wrong,
Right.
it kind of seems like they weren't being honest here. But wait, didn't the corporation have another argument?
Yeah.
Something about the employees taking too long to say something?
Exactly. The corporation argued that, they argued the employees waited too long to challenge their pay scale. And it was revised back in 2010. And they didn't file their case until 2017. So the corporation basically tried to use that delay to their advantage.
Oh, I see.
And legally speaking, this is called laches.
Okay, so laches. So it's not just a you snooze, you lose kind of thing.
Well, it is kind of like that, but it's a bit more nuanced than that. Imagine, like, you see someone damage your property, but you don't say anything for years, and then all of a sudden you decide to sue. The court's going to wonder why you waited so long. Was there a good reason? Were you trying to get an advantage by waiting?
Yeah.
Laches is about, it's about making sure people don't just sit on their rights.
Right.
And then suddenly make a claim when it might be more difficult for the other side to defend themselves.
So in this case, the corporation is basically saying that because the employees waited 7 years, their claims shouldn't even be considered, even if they were entitled to the higher pay.
Right. But you see, the Supreme Court had to balance that against the fact that the corporation had already been told in the Mukeshbhai case that their interpretation of the scheme was wrong.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a straightforward case of delay.
So this is getting interesting. So what happened? What did the Supreme Court decide? Did they rule in favor of the employees, or did they agree with the corporation's laches argument? We need to take a break, but when we come back, we'll dive into the verdict and uncover what it all means for you in your rights as an employee. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. You're probably wondering what the Supreme Court decided. In the case of Rishipai and the Bhavnagar Municipal Corporation.
Right, like did they let the corporation get away with this whole laches thing? Or did they actually protect the employee's rights.
Well, the Supreme Court didn't completely agree with the corporation's laches argument.
Hmm.
They did say that the employees waited a long time to file their case.
Yeah.
But they also considered the fact that the corporation had already gotten in trouble for misinterpreting the same scheme in the earlier Mukeshbai case.
Oh, right, right.
So basically they were saying, come on, corporation, you already knew this was wrong.
Exactly. Like, you can't play dumb now.
Yeah. And because of that, the Supreme Court said that the employees deserve to be paid according to the higher pay scale, the one outlined in the scheme.
So they won.
Yeah, they did. And the court said that those higher salaries should have been applied way back in 2010.
Wow. But hold on, didn't you say the Supreme Court, acknowledged the delay?
Yeah.
Did that change how much back pay they got?
Yes, it did. This is where it gets really interesting. The Supreme Court had to find a balance.
Mm-hmm.
They agreed that the employees deserved the higher pay, but they also knew that letting them claim back pay for the full 7 years might not be fair to the corporation. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. And the delay wasn't completely meaningless.
So what did they do?
They came up with a pretty clever solution, actually.
Oh.
The Supreme Court decided to only give them back pay for 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Before the date the employees filed their case.
Okay.
So instead of getting back pay all the way back to 2010,
Right.
they got it from 2014 onwards.
So not a total victory, but still a win for the employees. They got the correct pay scale.
Right.
And a bunch of back pay, too.
Yeah.
I bet the corporation wasn't happy.
No, not at all. And the Supreme Court wasn't done yet.
There's more.
Remember how we were talking about making the wronged party whole?
Yeah.
They didn't just stop at back pay. To really make up for what the employees had lost, the Supreme Court also gave them 7% interest on the money they were owed.
Okay.
And get this, the interest started from September 2017.
Wait, September 2017. That's
Yeah.
about a year after Mukeshbai won his case against the corporation.
Exactly.
Wow. Like
Oh.
they're sending a message.
Right.
You had a chance to learn from your mistake, corporation, and you blew it.
That's a good way to put it. They were basically saying that the corporation should have known better after that Mukeshbai case, and that the employees shouldn't have been denied their proper wages after that point.
Okay, so what are the bigger implications of all this? Does this case mean anything for other companies or employees in similar situations?
Absolutely. This case makes it really clear that companies can't just hide behind tricky wording in employment schemes or contracts.
Yeah.
They have to apply these schemes fairly and consistently. And if they get it wrong, employees don't have to just put up with it.
Right.
And it also shows how important it is to act fast when you believe your rights have been violated. The employees in this case eventually won. But, the delay did mean they got less back pay. Just imagine if they had filed their case way back in 2010, they probably would have gotten the whole amount.
That's a really good point. So laches isn't just a legal technicality then. It's about being proactive. If your pay or benefits seem off, don't wait years to do something about it.
Yeah.
The sooner you act, the better your chances of getting everything you're owed. If your claim is valid, of course.
Right.
This has been really helpful, but I have to admit, I'm still trying to fully wrap my head around laches. It seems so complicated. Can you give us a real-world example, something everyone listening can relate to?
Sure. Imagine you hire a contractor to renovate your kitchen, and they mess up big time. It affects how you can use the kitchen.
Yeah.
But you're busy, and you just live with the problem for 5 years.
Okay.
Then you suddenly decide to sue the contractor for doing a bad job. The contractor could argue laches. They could say you should have said something sooner when it was fresh in everyone's mind, easier to fix.
Yeah.
And the court might agree. They might limit what you get, even if you have a valid claim, just because you waited so long.
Oh, okay. That makes it much clearer. So it's really important to act quickly anytime you feel like your rights have been violated. But does this only apply in India? Or could this ruling affect employees in other countries too?
That's a great question. And it's one we'll talk about more in the last part of our deep dive. This case happened in India, but the ideas behind it, things like clear communication, fairness, and taking action quickly, these are important everywhere.
Yeah.
The exact legal outcomes might be different depending on the laws of a specific place, but the main message stays the same.
We've uncovered so much already. The Supreme Court's decision, laches, precedents, and how important it is to act fast to protect your rights. But there's one last thing to think about. What happened after this big case? How did it affect the fight for employee rights in general? Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive. We'll answer those questions and leave you with something to think about.
So, welcome back. We've been talking about this really interesting Indian Supreme Court case. And now it's time to connect the dots, see how far it all went. We know that the employees won, but what happened after that? Did their victory just kind of fade away, or did it really change anything?
Yeah, like, did anything actually come from it?
Well, their story is a great example of how one case can lead to bigger changes. It wasn't just about those employees getting their back pay. It was about setting a standard, saying this is how these types of schemes should be understood, and this is how employees should be treated.
So it wasn't just about them winning their specific case.
Right. It had a wider impact. Think about all the other employees in India who might have been in the same boat, with confusing rules and pay discrepancies. This case showed them they had options, that they didn't have to just accept things, they could fight for their rights. And they had a legal precedent to back them up.
It's like they paved the way for others.
Yeah, exactly. Their courage to fight the system. Even though it took years and so much effort, it probably inspired others to do the same. Victories like this often encourage others to speak up and demand fairness.
And not just employees, right?
Yeah.
Didn't this case probably have companies scrambling to check their own policies and practices to make sure they weren't doing anything wrong?
Absolutely. Imagine you're a lawyer for a company, you see this ruling, and you immediately start checking your own policies, making sure everything's interpreted correctly. No one wants to be in the Bhavnagar Municipal Corporation's shoes, right?
Right?
Facing a lawsuit and a big financial hit.
So it kind of forced companies to be more transparent and accountable.
Exactly. And that's good for everyone. When companies are upfront about fair treatment and clear communication, it creates a better work environment, less conflict, more trust between employees and employers. And in the end, it helps the economy as a whole.
This case really shows how impactful a single legal victory can be. It's not just about one person or group getting justice. It's about creating lasting change and setting a better example for the future.
Right. And the ripple effect doesn't stop there. Think about what this case could mean for law schools, labor rights groups, even people making policies. They see this ruling and they learn from it. Use it to shape future laws and strategies.
It's like a chain reaction of positive changes,
Yeah.
all because those employees stood up for themselves.
And this is why access to legal information and resources is so important. What if those employees didn't know their rights or couldn't afford a lawyer this whole case and everything that came from it? It might never have happened.
It's a good reminder that knowing your rights is power, and that even in something as complex as the legal system, individuals can make a difference.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this case, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. This story shows how interconnected everything is. A legal battle in one part of the world can inspire change in another. A single voice can grow into a chorus. And fighting for individual justice can create a fairer future for everyone.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.